The smell of burnt toast hit me first, sharp and bitter, like the look on Emma's face when she opened the front door and found me standing there with my single suitcase. I watched her jaw tighten, her eyes flicker toward the neighbor's windows, and I knew in that moment that the test I designed had already begun to fail. Not because she was cruel, but because I had misjudged how far kindness could stretch when it believed itself stretched thin. My name is Catherine Whittemore, and for 32 years I wore wealth the way other women wear perfume, lightly but impossible to ignore. My late husband, Richard, built Whittemore Industrial Solutions from a single patent and a garage in 1987. By the time he passed in 2019, we employed over 2,000 people across 4 states. The house in Greenwich had 12 bedrooms. The summer place in the Hamptons had a dock long enough for 2 yachts. I never apologized for any of it, but I also never flaunted it, not in the way some of our circle did. I drove myself to the grocery store. I knew the names of the cleaning staff. When my son, Daniel, brought Emma home for Thanksgiving in 2020, I liked her immediately. She was a high school art teacher from Queens with paint under her nails and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She didn't know Whitmore was a name that opened doors. She thought we were comfortable, maybe upper middle class. Daniel had been careful about that. They married in the spring of 2021, a small garden ceremony at our Connecticut estate. Emma cried when she saw the grounds. She whispered to Daniel that it was like a fairy tale. I remember thinking how sweet that was, how uncomplicated. I gave them the carriage house on the property as a wedding gift, a 4-bedroom gem with original hardwood and a view of the rose garden. Emma decorated it herself, spent weekends at estate sales, repainted the kitchen cabinets by hand. I thought she was grounded. I thought she understood that money was a tool, not a measure of a person. I was wrong, but not in the way I expected. Daniel worked in the family business, but he'd always been more interested in philanthropy than profit margins. He ran our charitable foundation, managed grants, traveled to see projects in person. Emma supported him, threw herself into volunteer work at the local community center, started an after-school art program for kids who couldn't afford supplies. I admired her for it. I told her so, more than once. But there were small things, moments I tucked away without examining too closely. The way her smile thinned when Daniel mentioned a business setback, the way she'd glance at my jewelry at family dinners, then look down at her own bare fingers, the way she stopped asking me about Richard, about the early years, about anything that wasn't directly about the present. By late 2023, Daniel started talking about expanding the foundation internationally. He was passionate, lit up in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy showing me his science fair projects. Emma seemed less enthusiastic. She'd change the subject, talk about needing a new car, about the carriage house needing renovations, about how hard it was to live on a teacher's salary when everything around them was so expensive. I didn't understand that last part. Daniel's trust fund paid him over $300,000 a year, separate from his foundation salary. They had no mortgage, no debt. Emma's teaching income was hers to spend however she liked. But the comments kept coming, subtle digs at people who don't have to worry about money, pointed remarks about the real world, a strange new tension at Sunday dinners where she'd go quiet when I mentioned travel or spoke about foundation projects. In January 2024, I overheard a phone conversation. Emma was in the kitchen, talking to someone, her sister, I assumed. Her voice carried through the hall. She said, "I'm surrounded by money I can't touch. It's like living in a museum. Danny's too soft to ask for what we deserve. His mother sits on millions while we're supposed to be grateful for hand-me-downs." I stood very still. The grandfather clock in the foyer ticked. Outside, snow was falling in thick, silent curtains. Hand-me-downs. The carriage house I'd given them was worth $2 million. That night, I made a decision. I told myself it was about understanding, about seeing who Emma really was when she thought the money was gone. I told myself I was protecting Daniel, protecting the foundation, protecting the legacy Richard and I had built. Maybe I was. Maybe I just wanted to be proven wrong. I called my attorney, Marcus Webb, the next morning. He'd handled the Whitmore family affairs for 20 years, knew every account, every property, every trust. I explained what I wanted, a plausible fiction that would make me appear suddenly, dramatically, broke. You want to stage a financial collapse? Marcus's voice was careful, the tone he used when he thought I was acting emotionally. I want to see how my family responds to hardship, I corrected. Just for a few months. Can it be done? It could. Marcus was thorough. We moved my liquid assets into a trust he controlled, one that wouldn't appear in any casual search. We crafted a story about bad investments, a betrayal by a business partner Daniel didn't know, legal fees that had drained everything. The Greenwich house would go into emergency sale. I'd move out, live modestly, see who stood by me. What about Daniel? Marcus asked. He'll be fine. His trust is separate, untouchable. This is just about me. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he did his job. I broke the news to Daniel and Emma on a rainy Tuesday in February. I kept my voice steady, apologetic, slightly embarrassed. I explained the situation, the failed investments, the legal tangle, the need to liquidate assets quickly. The house was going on the market. I'd be moving to a small rental apartment in Stamford while things were sorted out. Daniel's face went pale. Mom, we'll figure this out. You can stay with us. The carriage house has plenty of room. I looked at Emma. She was staring at the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When she finally looked up, her expression was strange, something between shock and calculation. Of course, she said slowly. You're welcome to stay with us, Catherine. It's the least we can do. The least. That word echoed. I moved in 3 weeks later, 1 suitcase and a small bag of toiletries. I'd taken nothing from the main house except clothes and a few books. Everything else was being inventoried for sale. I watched Emma's face as I unpacked in the guest room, the smallest bedroom, the one they'd been using for storage. She'd cleared it out, but the walls still had boxes stacked in the corners. The bed was a double, not a queen. The window looked out at the driveway. It's perfect, I said. Thank you, Emma. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We'll make it work. That night, I heard them arguing through the wall. Emma's voice was a hiss, Daniel's a low murmur. I caught fragments. How long? We don't know. This changes everything, Danny. She's my mother. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The first 2 weeks were careful, almost polite. Emma made breakfast, asked if I needed anything, kept up the appearance of hospitality, but the cracks showed quickly. She stopped making extra coffee. She started leaving notes on the refrigerator about grocery budgets and splitting costs fairly. She mentioned, casually, that the utility bills had gone up since I'd arrived. I paid them without comment. I'd set up a modest checking account under the fiction of my remaining savings, enough to contribute, not enough to look suspicious. Emma took the checks with a tight smile. Daniel was oblivious. He was wrapped up in foundation work, traveling twice that month to visit projects in New Mexico and Ohio. When he was home, he was distracted, worried about me in a way that made my chest ache. I hated lying to him, but I needed to see this through. In March, Emma started talking about downsizing. She brought it up at dinner one night, her tone light, reasonable. We've been thinking, Danny and I, the carriage house is really too big for 3 people. And with your mom's situation, it might make sense to sell it, move somewhere smaller, use the equity to help Catherine get back on her feet. I looked at Daniel, his frown, fork halfway to his mouth. Sell the house? Emma, this is our home. It's an asset. And your mother needs help. Don't you think she'd feel better if we were all contributing? Contributing? The house I'd given them, the house that was legally theirs, was now an asset to be liquidated for my benefit. I kept my voice neutral. That's very thoughtful, Emma, but I wouldn't want you to uproot yourselves for me. I'll be fine once the legal matters settle. Will you? Emma's eyes were sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like things are settling. It looks like they're getting worse. She wasn't wrong, according to the story I'd built. Marcus had been feeding Daniel updates about complications and delays. The fiction was holding, but Emma was pushing in a direction I hadn't anticipated. She didn't want to help me, she wanted to convert me into liquidity. The next incident came in early April. I'd gone to the community center to volunteer, something I'd done quietly for years, never under the Whitmore name. Emma saw me leaving and asked where I was going. When I told her, she laughed. Volunteering, Catherine, you can't afford to give away your time right now. You should be looking for work, real work. I'm 71, I said mildly. Most employers aren't looking for septuagenarians. Then maybe you should be more careful about how you spend your days. Her tone was sharp. Danny and I are both working. We're carrying this household. It would be nice if you contributed more than just showing up. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What would you like me to do, Emma? I don't know. Clean more, cook, something useful. I started cooking. I'd always enjoyed it, and it gave me something to do besides sit in that small guest room and listen to Emma's resentment leak through the walls. I made dinners, left them in the oven with instructions. I scrubbed the kitchen until the grout shone. I did laundry, folded it, left it in neat stacks outside their bedroom door. Emma accepted it all without thanks. She started leaving longer lists, groceries to buy, errands to run, dry cleaning to pick up. I became a housekeeper in the house I'd given them. Daniel noticed, finally, in late April. He came home early one afternoon and found me on my hands and knees scrubbing the bathroom floor. He stood in the doorway, stricken. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Helping out," I said, sitting back on my heels. Emma mentioned the house needed more attention. "Emma?" He stopped, his jaw working. "You don't have to do this. You're my mother. I'm also a guest who can't pay rent. This is how I contribute." He looked like I'd slapped him. He didn't bring it up with Emma, though. I think he was afraid of what he'd find if he pulled that thread. In May, the mask slipped further. Emma had a friend over, a woman from the community center where we both volunteered. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard them talking in the living room. Emma's voice carried, bright and amused. "Honestly, it's like having a live-in maid. She cooks, she cleans, she stays out of the way. I mean, I feel bad for her, obviously, but it's not the worst arrangement." Her friend laughed. "And she was rich? That must be so humiliating for her." "She had money," Emma corrected, "but she didn't earn it. Her husband did. Now she's finding out what it's like to actually work for a living." I set down the knife I'd been using to slice tomatoes. My hands were shaking. That evening, Emma asked me to move my things out of the guest room closet. She wanted to use it for storage. I moved my suitcase to the floor beside the bed. There was barely room to walk. 2 days later, she told me I'd need to start contributing more financially. "The grocery bills are out of control, Catherine. You're eating food, using electricity, taking up space. Danny says we shouldn't charge you rent, but at some point this becomes a burden." I wrote her a check for $500. It was a quarter of what I had in my remaining savings account. She took it without meeting my eyes. By the end of May, I was sleeping in a room that felt like a storage closet, eating meals, standing up in the kitchen because Emma had started hosting dinner parties and I wasn't invited to join them, and listening to my daughter-in-law complain to her friends about the burden of caring for her broke mother-in-law. Daniel was traveling more. I think he couldn't stand to see what was happening. But I could. I saw all of it. And I was ready for the next step. In early June, Emma made her move. She sat me down at the kitchen table one morning after Daniel had left for work. Her expression was serious, almost kind. It was the kindness that made my stomach turn. "Catherine, we need to talk about your future." I folded my hands and waited. "Danny and I have been discussing this, and we think it would be better for everyone if you found somewhere else to live. Just temporarily," she added quickly, "until you get back on your feet. We've looked into some assisted living communities, very affordable, nice places. You'd have your own room, meals provided, activities. It might actually be better for you than staying here." Assisted living. She wanted to put me in a home. "I see," I said quietly. "Does Daniel know you're suggesting this?" "He agrees that you need more structure, more support than we can give you here." Her eyes were earnest, apologetic. "We're not abandoning you, Catherine. We just think this is the healthiest choice for everyone." "Healthy for whom?" Her smile thinned. "For all of us. You've been withdrawn, depressed maybe. Being here, seeing what you've lost, it can't be easy. A change of scenery might help." "I've lost nothing," I said. The words came out harder than I intended. Emma blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I've lost nothing," I repeated, slower. "Because I gave it away, Emma. The house, the security, the choice to live simply. I gave those things to you, Emma, when you married my son. But I've never lost my dignity. Not until now." She leaned back, confusion flickering across her face. "What are you talking about?" I stood. My legs felt steadier than they had in months. "I'm talking about the fact that I'm not broke. I never was. This was a test, Emma. A cruel one, maybe, but you failed it." Her face went through a series of changes, confusion to disbelief to dawning horror. "What?" "Every dollar is exactly where it's always been. The house, the business, the investments, all intact. I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought the money was gone. I wanted to see if you'd love this family, love Daniel, love me, without the cushion of wealth." Emma was on her feet now, her chair scraping back. "You lied?" "I tested," I corrected, "and you revealed exactly who you are. Someone who measures worth in dollar signs. Someone who treats people like burdens the moment they can't be converted into assets. You," she was shaking, her face flushed, "you manipulated us. You made Danny worry sick. You made me think." "You made yourself think," I interrupted. "I never asked you to treat me like a servant. I never asked you to charge me rent or suggest assisted living. You did those things because you believed I was worthless without money. That's not a test result, Emma. That's a choice you made." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. Then her eyes hardened. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house." Her voice was shaking but firm. "You lied to us, manipulated us, made us look like monsters. I don't care if you're Danny's mother. I don't care if you own half of Connecticut. Get out, now." I'd expected anger. I hadn't expected expulsion. "Emma." "Now." She was screaming now, her face red, tears streaming. Get out, or I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing." I heard footsteps on the stairs. Daniel appeared, disheveled, his eyes wide. "What's going on?" "Your mother has been lying to us. She's not broke. She never was. This whole thing was a sick test, and she expects us to just accept it." Daniel looked at me. I saw the hurt in his eyes, the betrayal. "Mom?" "It's true," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I needed to know." "Know what?" "Know that we'd take care of you. We did. We tried. And you spied on us? I observed, I said. And what I saw, I don't care what you saw. Emma was sobbing now. You violated our trust. You made a fool out of me. I won't forgive this. I can't. She pointed at the door. Leave, now, or I swear to God, Catherine, I will drag you out myself. I'd expected anger. I hadn't expected internment. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something, to intervene, but he just stood there, his face pale, his eyes distant. He didn't defend me, he didn't defend Emma. He was frozen between us. So I picked up my suitcase, still packed from that morning's half-hearted attempt at organization, and I walked out of the door of the house I'd given them. Emma slammed it behind me hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood on the driveway in the June sunlight, surrounded by the roses I'd planted years ago, and I realized I'd pushed the test too far. I'd wanted revelation, but I'd caused devastation instead. I drove to the Four Seasons in Greenwich and checked into a suite. Marcus called within the hour. I heard from Daniel. Are you all right? No, I said. I don't think I am. Should I start undoing the fiction? Not yet, I said. Let me think. I spent 3 days in that hotel room, replaying every moment, every choice. I called Daniel twice. He didn't answer. Emma blocked my number. On the 4th day, I received a letter. It was delivered by courier to the hotel. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no signature. Catherine, you wanted to test us. Fine. Now we are testing you. The carriage house is ours, legally. You made sure of that when you gifted it. We're keeping it. We're also suing for emotional distress and defamation. You've told people we mistreated you, that we forced you to live in squalor, that we tried to institutionalize you. We have witnesses. Emma's friends, neighbors who saw you scrubbing floors, people at the community center who heard you crying in the bathroom. You played a game and you lost. Don't contact us again. Daniel had written it. My son, my only child, had drafted a legal threat. I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I called Marcus and told him to move forward. With what? He asked carefully. With the truth, I said. All of it. Marcus worked quickly. He started by compiling a timeline, every transaction, every interaction, every documented moment since I'd moved into the carriage house, bank records showing the checks I'd written Emma, emails I'd sent to Marcus detailing the conditions, photos I'd taken of the guest room, the narrow space, the boxes that never moved. I hadn't been as passive as Emma thought. I'd documented everything. The lawsuit is a bluff, Marcus said during a meeting at his office. They have no case for emotional distress. You never defamed them publicly. The people who saw you working in the house saw exactly what was happening. They're not going to testify that you lied. What about the house? I asked. The carriage house is legally theirs. You gave it as a wedding gift. No strings. They can keep it. But, Marcus leaned back, tapping his pen against his desk, they can't sue you and keep the gift. Accepting your generosity while claiming you abused them is untenable. A judge would see through that immediately. So we call their bluff? We do more than that, Marcus said. We show them exactly what they walked away from. He explained the plan. It was surgical, precise, and completely legal. We'd make no threats. We'd simply reveal the full scope of the Whitmore estate to Daniel and Emma, not as a bribe, not as a punishment, but as information they had every right to know. Daniel's trust was irrevocable, but there were other assets, properties he didn't know about, investments in his name that wouldn't mature for decades, a secondary trust set up for his children he didn't have yet, but I'd planned for anyway. Emma didn't know the family she'd married into. She'd seen the Greenwich house, the carriage house, the surface wealth. She hadn't seen the depth. I want them to understand what they threw away, I said. Not money, trust, family, the willingness to be loved. Marcus nodded. I'll prepare the disclosures. While he worked, I did something else. I hired a private investigator, discreetly, ethically, to look into Emma's finances, not to dig up dirt, but to understand. What was driving her? Was it just greed, or was there something else? The report came back in 10 days. Emma had debts I hadn't known about. Student loans from her master's degree, over $80,000. Credit cards maxed out at $35,000. A personal loan from her sister, another $20,000. She'd been paying minimums for years, treading water, watching her teacher's salary disappear into interest. When she married Daniel, she thought her problems were solved, and when I lost everything, she thought her escape route had been sealed shut. I didn't forgive her, but I understood her. I also learned something else. Emma had been funneling money. The checks I'd written her for expenses hadn't gone to household bills. They'd gone to her debts. She'd been using my poverty to pay down her own secret financial crisis. It didn't make what she'd done right, but it made her human. By mid-July, Marcus had everything ready: the financial disclosures, the timeline, the documentation. We sent a package to Daniel and Emma via certified mail. No legal threats, just information. The letter I included was simple. Daniel, I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. The test was wrong, and I own that. But what happened afterward, the way I was treated, the way I was discarded, that was your choice and Emma's, not mine. Enclosed are documents showing the full scope of the Whitmore estate. Some of these assets are yours, some are held in trust for your future children, some remain mine. I'm not withholding anything. I'm simply showing you what exists. The carriage house is yours. Keep it. I won't contest that. But understand that the gift came from love, not obligation. And when love is met with contempt, the relationship changes. I'll always be your mother. I'll always love you. But I won't beg to be treated with dignity. Mom. I sent the package and waited. The call came 4 days later. Daniel's number lit up my phone at 11 o'clock at night. I almost didn't answer, but something, hope maybe, or just exhaustion, made me pick up. Mom? His voice was raw, like he'd been crying. Daniel. There was a long silence. I heard him breathing, heard something rustling in the background. I saw the papers, he said finally. The trusts, the properties, He stopped. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you when you turned 25, when your father died, every time the estate was reviewed. You never asked for details, Daniel. You never wanted to know the numbers. Because I didn't care about the numbers, his voice broke. I cared about the work, the foundation, helping people. I thought that's what mattered to you too. It is what matters, I said quietly, but money is a tool, and tools need to be understood. You can't build a foundation, literal or metaphorical, without knowing what you're building on. Another silence. Emma didn't know, he said, about the secondary trusts, the properties in the kids' names. She didn't know any of it. I know. He stopped again. She's not handling this well. I imagine not. She said things during those months, things I didn't want to hear. I told myself she was stressed, that we were all stressed. But after you left, after she kicked you out, his voice dropped to a whisper. She said she was glad. She said now we could finally move on, stop pretending your problems were our responsibility. She said, he choked on the words, she said you'd gotten what you deserved. I closed my eyes. Daniel? I didn't defend you, he said. When she said that, I just sat there. I was so angry at you for lying that I let her say those things, and I didn't defend you. You were hurt. Hurt people don't think clearly. She wants a divorce. The words hung in the air between us. What? I barely whispered it. She saw the papers, saw the trusts, and her first reaction wasn't relief or gratitude, it was anger. She said you'd humiliated her, that she'd never be able to face her friends again. I told her that wasn't what mattered, that we needed to focus on healing the family. She said, he swallowed hard, she said if I chose you over her, she'd leave. So I chose you, Mom, and she's leaving. I felt something crack open in my chest, grief and relief and regret all at once. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Don't be. His voice was firmer now. I chose wrong the first time. When she kicked you out, when she called you a liar and a manipulator, I should have stopped her. I should have said, no, we work this out. We talk. We don't throw people away. But I was a coward. I let her make me choose, and I chose the easy thing. I chose not rocking the boat. You were trying to keep your marriage together. I was trying to avoid conflict. There's a difference. And now I'm looking at the woman I married, really looking, and I don't recognize her. Or maybe I do, and I just didn't want to see it before. What happens now? I asked. Now I figure out who I am without her, and I'd like to figure that out with you, if you'll let me. I was crying now, silent tears sliding down my face. Of course. Always. Can I come see you tomorrow? I'm at the Four Seasons, Suite 412. I'll be there at 9. We hung up. I sat in the dark hotel room and let myself cry. For Daniel's broken marriage, for the test that had gone so wrong, for the daughter-in-law I'd hoped would be different, but also for the truth that had finally surfaced. Daniel arrived at 9 sharp. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed. I hugged him at the door, held him like I had when he was a boy, and the world felt too big. "Tell me what happened," I said. We sat at the small dining table in the suite, and he told me everything. How Emma had spiraled after seeing the papers, how she'd accused me of hiding wealth and playing games, how she'd demanded Daniel choose between supporting her lawsuit or supporting me, how he'd finally said, "Neither. I support the truth, and the truth is that my mother tested us and we failed." Emma had left that same night. She'd gone to her sister's, taken half the carriage house furniture, and texted Daniel a list of demands: the house, a cash settlement, and a formal apology from me. "She thinks she has leverage," Daniel said tiredly. "She thinks because the house is legally hers, because she can claim emotional harm, that you'll pay her to go away quietly." "Will I?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw clarity in his eyes. "No, you won't, because paying her would validate everything she did, and what she did was unforgivable." I reached across the table and took his hand. "The test was wrong, Daniel. I was wrong. I need you to know that. I do know, but I also know that without it, I might have spent the next decade slowly realizing I'd married someone who loved my name more than my heart. You gave me truth, Mom. It's a brutal gift, but it's still a gift." We sat in silence for a long moment. "What do we do now?" I asked finally. "We rebuild. We figure out how to be a family again, and we let Emma go." 2 weeks later, Emma filed for divorce. She also filed a civil suit against me for fraud and emotional distress. Marcus handled both with quiet efficiency. The divorce moved forward. Daniel didn't contest it. The lawsuit was dismissed within a month. The judge's opinion included a line that Marcus read to me over the phone. The plaintiff's claim that she was harmed by the defendant's financial test is undermined by her own actions during the period in question, which demonstrate a focus on material gain rather than familial support. Emma got the carriage house in the divorce settlement. Daniel signed it over without argument. It was worth over $2 million. She sold it within 6 months and paid off her debts. I never saw her again. It's been 18 months since that June morning when Emma told me to leave. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday now. Sometimes at my place. I bought a smaller home in Litchfield, something manageable, something that feels like mine, and sometimes at his new apartment in New Haven. He's still running the foundation, still traveling to see projects, still passionate about the work. He's also started therapy. We both have. We talk about trust, about testing, about the ways love can curdle into manipulation if you're not careful. I have apologized more times than I can count, and he's forgiven me, though I'm not sure I've forgiven myself. I learned something from those months in the carriage house, scrubbing floors and writing checks and listening to Emma laugh with her friends about her live-in maid. I learned that poverty, even pretend poverty, is a mirror. It shows you who people are when the varnish is stripped away. But it also showed me who I am, and I didn't like everything I saw. Testing someone's love by taking away their comfort is cruel. I told myself it was wisdom, discernment, protection, but really it was control. I wanted to orchestrate a revelation, to force Emma into showing her true colors, without considering that people are more than their worst moments under pressure. Emma failed my test, but I failed too. I failed to build a relationship with her that was strong enough to withstand doubt. I failed to see her debts, her fears, her reasons for grasping. I failed to be the mother-in-law she needed because I was too busy being the matriarch I thought I had to be. Would things have been different if I'd just talked to her? If I'd said, "Emma, I'm worried about how you view money. Can we talk about that?" Maybe, maybe not. But I'll never know because I chose theater over honesty. The thing about tests is that they tell you results, not reasons. Emma treated me poorly when she thought I was broke. That's a fact. But why did she do it? Fear? Resentment? A lifetime of struggling that made her see poverty as contagious? I'll never know the full answer because I never asked the full question. Daniel tells me I shouldn't carry all the blame. She made her choices, Mom, he says. You created a situation, but she chose how to respond. He's right, but so am I. These days, I volunteer at a women's shelter in Hartford. I tutor kids in reading, help women prepare for job interviews, listen to stories that remind me how thin the line is between security and crisis. Some of the women there have been betrayed by family. Some have been the betrayers. Most are both. I don't tell them I'm wealthy. I don't test them. I just show up week after week and try to be useful. Last month, Daniel met someone new, a librarian named Sophie, who laughs at his terrible jokes and doesn't care about the Whitmore name. He brought her to Sunday dinner, nervous, watching my face for judgment. I liked her immediately, but more than that, I trusted Daniel to choose wisely this time. Because the test isn't who someone is at their worst. The test is whether they're willing to grow past it. Emma sent me a letter 6 months ago. It was short, typed, postmarked from California. She'd moved, started over, was teaching at a new school. The letter didn't apologize, but it acknowledged, I wasn't my best self during that time. I let fear make me small. I'm working on that now. I didn't write back, not because I'm angry, but because some chapters need to close fully before new ones can begin. I keep her letter, though, in a drawer in my desk, a reminder that people contain multitudes, greed and kindness, cruelty and vulnerability, failure and the possibility of something better. If I could go back, I'd do it differently. I'd talk instead of test. I'd trust instead of trap. But I can't go back, so I go forward, with Daniel, with Sophie, with the women at the shelter, with every small choice to meet people where they are instead of where I think they should be. Money is still a tool, but so is honesty, so is grace, and those tools, I'm learning, build stronger foundations than any test ever could. The roses I planted at the Greenwich house are blooming again this spring. I drove past last week, saw them spilling over the fence in waves of red and white. Someone new lives there now, a young family with 2 kids and a dog. They've painted the shutters blue, hung a swing from the old oak tree. It looks happy. It looks loved. It looks like it's moved on.
I'm trying to do the same. If this emotional story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. We share real-life family drama and stories of resilience every week. Your support means everything. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.